Hello, as I mentioned in a previous video, I thought I would show you how I get my clays consistent sizes. I'm very wary of, with handmade products, they're not all exactly the same, but what I feel my customers do expect is a level of consistency. If someone's being charged the same price for each item, you don't want one person to be getting a bigger item, someone to be getting a smaller item, which does sometimes happen with things like the dolls. Their legs are all rolled by hand, and their arms and heads and things like that. So there may be slight variations in slight variations in the size. But where I can, I create a mould, and what that does is it allows me to make all my clays the same size, which I personally like. I know that my customers are all getting consistent products, and if they come back to me for that product again, they're going to be getting the same product near enough, as near enough as I can make it. It is a handmade product. So I just thought I would show you the process, show you my moulds, and so you can sort of see what goes into making these clays, you know, the same. I use a variety of moulds. There are moulds that I've purchased, you know, Katie Sue moulds. They're designed for sugar work and things like that, but multi-purpose. There are moulds that I've had cast, so someone else has made this for me. And then there are moulds that I make myself, which is how I do it now. So we've got this is the base for the whale and the narwhal and probably a bigger elephant should I get round to making it. So the designs are mine. I've got them somewhere. I should have really had them to hand. Oh, here's a rabbit. Oh, here is. The designs are mine. So I make the clay, I bake it, and then I set it. So you can't buy these moulds anywhere else. I don't produce them to sell, nor will I. I did think about it before, but and I keep these. Obviously, I imagine they'll end up in some sort of museum long after I'm gone. Joking. So yes, so these are my moulds. We've got the unicorn base. Oh, the unicorn base. So as you can see, this is my teddy bear. I've got quite a few teddy bear moulds because they're very, very popular, and I try to keep a mould for the white bears, a mould for the pink bears. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's how I try to do it. And then we've got the mould for the rabbit. Now this is just an example because I've got them to hand. So this is the base for the rabbit. And as you can see, it's very, very textured. So to try and do that for each rabbit to sell would take me such a long time. They'd have to be about £10 each, and no one's going to pay that for an embellishment this size. So as you can see, I moulded it. It cures quite quickly, the silicone I use, and then it pops out and I'm left with a mould. This one is a little bit thin on the bottom, but the bunnies pop out of there, as you know, I can't really fault it. So yes, I know a lot of people are like, moulds, it's not really handmade. Well, it is handmade. The design's mine, as you can see. It's my bunny head, it's my whale. I just like people to have everything the same size. So if you buy one whale, 2 whales, 3 whales, or even 25 whales, they're all the same. Obviously, you know, where I add the finishing details, they vary slightly, but nothing that anyone is going to moan about. And that's what I like. That's why I like to cast my bases, because I like everyone to be getting the same thing for the money. So now I will show you what I use and how I mould them. I use a 2-part silicone, and I'm pretty sure that it's not food grade. I don't need it to be food grade, so that doesn't really bother me. I won't be recommending a brand simply because I am still working through to find my perfect silicone. So when I find the one that I love, I will let you know. I've also tried, and this one is made using a putty, a 2-part putty that you mix together. I didn't like it. I didn't like using it. I found it very sticky, but the lady that cast these for me, she has the magic touch. She knows how to do it, but I do it in-house. I do it myself now simply because I need a quick turnaround on the moulds. I need to be able to cast a mould and have it, you know, that night or the next day, depending on how thick they are. That's the only reason. I need a quicker turnaround. When I've designed something, I want to be able to cast it and have it to use the next day, whereas sending it off to the lady that used to do them for me, you know, posting it out, her casting it, sending it back, and it just took a long time. So it's the only reason. She didn't do anything wrong. I just needed to be able to do it myself. So yeah, I use a 2-part silicone. This is the one I'm using at the moment, and this is the hardener. Oh, it's messy stuff and I'm messy, so should we just get to it? What you need is a set of scales. Now, these are just cheap kitchen scales. They're not kitchen scales anymore because I've spilt copious amounts of silicone on them, so now they're just up here. Ramekin. I normally use 2, but I'm only making a small batch, so I just need 1. Something to set the mould in, the piece you're casting, piece of paper, skewers, rolling pin, and a lump of old clay. That's all set up now, and I shall be back. Right, so I'm hoping not to wobble my desk too much. This is an old clay. Normally I use Play-Doh, but we don't have any here, and Sculpey. I'm using Sculpey simply because it's really soft and quick to work with. It doesn't really matter. I've seen some people just setting them on sellotape, but I just think a bit of clay is handy. Now, the skewers serve 2 purposes. They act as a guide. I'm trying not to wobble the camera too much. They act as a guide, so you get a nice even base. And then what you do is you try not to lose what you're doing. There we go. So I'm setting a tooth. I'm casting a tooth. So you just pop the back in. Gentle push, not too deep, because it will warp your clay. And you center your cutter. I use yogurt pots as well. I use whatever I have to hand. And then that's set up, ready to go. So now the next thing to do is to weigh out the silicone and add the hardener. This is where it all gets very messy. So scales on. Just checking the measurements. Oh, I don't want it in pounds and ounces. There we go. So set that on. I set it to tear so it goes back to 0. And this could go horribly wrong, and I've only got enough to do 1 lot, so bear with me. This is going to be a 1 take, and if it's a disaster, it's a disaster. Silence so I can concentrate on what I'm doing. I want 50 grams or near enough. I'll do 50. And I just try and clean the edge away. Ooh, that didn't work. Oh, I've got it everywhere. I told you it would be messy. This is a 1 take thing as well. Right, so we just tear that back to 0. Ooh, make sure the lid's on the hardener, give that a good shake. And we need 5 grams of this. Too little and it won't set, and too much and I won't I won't be able to mix it quick enough. Now this is just the ratio for this particular silicone. I've used others and they've been different again. So I'm just going to quickly mix this up now till it's all one colour. Try and get my scales out of the way. Ooh. It doesn't take long to mix at all. It's a bit bubbly, but we won't worry too much about that. Now I'm going to try and pour this, make sure it's all completely mixed. Oop. Pop that there. Get myself another wet wipe ready. Oop. And I pour it from a little bit of a height, as high as I can manage. And I just pour it slowly. I try not to move the pot too much. The silicone will find its way around the tooth. Pouring it from up high helps to get rid of some of the bubbles as well. I can't talk and concentrate at the same time. I'm not one of those wonderful women that's very good at multitasking. That's not me. I think that's probably deep enough. And all I do now is I leave that'll set, and then you can just peel it out and reuse it. I did have plastic cups, but they're under my desk. I just can't bring myself to use them. I feel that if I can use an alternative, I will. Now what I'm doing is just popping a couple of the surface bubbles. Oop. I hope you can see this properly. And basically just leave that to set. Should be ready to pop out by tonight, but I may leave it till tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. I'll come back to it a bit later and I'll poke the top of it. You'll soon know if your finger sort of sticks to the top of it. It's not ready. So we shall check back. I'm going to clean up the mess I've made. I've managed to get it on my blade, on my table mat. That's why I have a mat. So fingers crossed, and we'll see you in a bit. The silicone is all set up. Last night I prayed to the silicone gods that it all went well. So let's see, this is just, oh, actually I could probably keep that and use it for my next mould. Just pop it out. It's really durable at this point. Oh, and it's a nice thick mould. Oh, I'm crossing all the things. Right. Dry, discard. Keep for next mould. So I've got a really nice, smooth, flat, the little edges we trimmed, flat top. That's what we want. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now, I have a history of breaking my bases as I pop them out of mould, so hopefully and we've got a little small air bubble there. We won't really worry too much about that. I don't think it makes a difference, but if you can see inside, it's very crisp and exactly what I was hoping for. I got some scissors to trim the edge, and all I do to neaten up these edges is give it a little trim. Probably with smaller scissors, but I'm not that prepared. There we go. There's my mould. I'm very, very happy with that. I shall clean it up now with all the yellow clay and we will give it a test. That's lovely. And I don't know if you can see, it's got a little bit of a lip here, and I work on a glass board. I don't know if I'll do it now. So when you stick it down, you push your clay in, it creates section on your desk so it doesn't move. It's not going to do on this because it's not flat. Yes, very, very happy. And this is the pot that I just left the silicone in yesterday. And all you do is you peel this out. It's usually quite fun. Do you remember in school sticking glue to your hands and peeling it off? It's a little bit like that. Surely I'm not the only person that did that. It will come out. It's not going to come out now, is it? Because I'm filming it. Ugh. My ramekin, in case you're wondering, is a dessert came in it, and I kept it. I used to have lots and lots of them, but I've whittled them down. Here we go. Ready. If you can, it's got an indent of the pot on it. So now that's ready just to be washed and reused. And I can just go in there. Since we've got the yellow clay to hand, we'll use that. There's a place in this world for Sculpey clay. I don't use a lot of it. It's too soft to work with. Their colours are really, really good. But can you see how soft that is? I've maybe mixed it for a couple of seconds. I use Fimo almost exclusively. There are a few, about 3 or 4 colours of Sculpey that I do use. But it's mostly Fimo. So just take my blade now, and the reason I like a flat mould is so that I can trim, and I just trim a little bit at a time because these moulds can be cut, and I've cut plenty of them in my time. And what I do then, can you see it's just a little bit distorted? I pull it away from the edges just to neaten it up. I give it another trim. Most of my embellishments get used on hair bows and things like that, so they need to have nice flat backs. And then all we do, normally I would leave the clay to set to firm up a little bit in the mould, but we've got to, can you see where there's a couple of bumps? Oh, that's water. You see there's that little bump? That doesn't matter. What I have planned would cover it. I mean, I've more or less wiped it out there. So it's very successful. I'm very pleased with that. And I can't wait to make a proper white tooth now. I've got a plan for it. I shall show you the progress as I make it. That's it. That's the moulding process. If you have any questions about moulding, pop them below and I shall try to help you. I've ruined any continuity that this video would have had because I cut my fringe this morning. So that's the process of moulding, of how I mould. I've seen other ways to mould. I've seen people using other products. Like I said, there's the moulding putties, which are easily available. They're probably not as messy to work with as the silicone. I just don't particularly get on with them. I do like the flat base that casting with silicone gives me. There are people that don't agree with using moulds. I'm not one of them. I'm all for a mould. and most of my moulds are multi-purpose as well. So things like, for example, just gonna lean over, my, what is it, unicorn. He's also the base for a zebra. He's also the base for a giraffe. He's also the base for a Highland cow. Moulds are what you make of them. You know, if you're not very inventive and you're just popping out the same thing, maybe there's not much art involved. But I look a bit further than the mould, and I see the potential that they have. So I'm all for them. It makes life for me a little bit easier as well. It allows me to make things a bit quicker. What I do, and one day when my desk is tidy, I will show you how it's all set out. And what I do is I will fill up moulds, I'll let them sit for a little bit, I'll go and do something else, and then I'll pop them all out. And as I'm decorating, as I'm setting up the other moulds, then I'm decorating the ones I've popped out. So it gives me a bit of what's the word? It gives me a bit of a production line going, so that I'm not just stuck waiting for things to happen. I can keep going. It helps me restock quicker. And other than that, if I had to make every single item with all the textures and things like that by hand, I'd never get anything done. And you'd all be waiting for stuff for ages, which you are anyway. It would just be worse. So yeah, any questions about moulding at all, send them. Pop them in the comments. Send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, however you choose to contact me. Carry a pigeon if you choose. And if I can help you, I will. And as soon as I've settled on my favourite silicone, I will let you all know. I pop a link below for the clays I've used, the tools, the blades, that sort of thing, so you can see what I'm using, you can see where you can buy them. I'm pretty happy with the silicone I've got at the moment. They're all about the same sort of price. They all work the same. I did have a bit of a disaster because I didn't read the ratios correctly. I thought, oh, all silicones are the same. And I mixed it up and I cast my things and it just didn't set because I didn't read the instructions properly. So learn from my mistakes and read the instructions because it went horribly wrong. I did manage to salvage 2 of the base pieces. It took me a good 20 minutes to wipe off all the unset silicone per piece. The other one was a multi-cavity mould that I was making of smaller items like my shells. There was some unicorn horns, leaves. They all went in the bin, so they're gone, and it was a disaster. So please learn from my mistakes. And I shall see you again for the next video. Thank you for joining me on my moulding journey. I hope I helped.